Hey everyone, this is Jan and you're watching SketchaLona Winter Blues Edition. Now it's not going to be that depressing, but I thought after all those holiday, cheery, vacation, vloggy type videos of the last couple of months, if you haven't seen those, be sure to check them out. This is going to be like last week's, just a little bit more focus on the art. So hope you stick around. There's going to be a third comic book project in the works, with the second one still being a mystery. What the hell are they doing outside? Who knows? It's Catalonia. They're probably upset about something. I can't keep up. So whereas last week I came up with a little list of plenty of things that I've probably never drawn before and that I should get a handle on, just a little something to keep the pencil going, so to speak, because that has kind of become my rule for 2019, as I did that 2019 resolution episode. Whatever happens, just keep the pencil moving, keep the ink flowing. I just have to keep on drawing every single day, and all will be all right. I will get to the end of my whole comic book series eventually, as soon as I finish issue 1 of Fosphor, my little sci-fi adventure comic book, which I will be working hard on this week again. But like I said, there's a new project in the works. Another thing I've learned is that I'm at my most productive when I'm most stressed out, and when I've got more than one pot on the stove, so to speak. When I've got too many things to go on, I just hit the grind and I just keep going. And so I just have to have lists of things that I have to draw, even though it'll feel overwhelming. If a bunch of those lists are things that I know I can draw, unlike the comic book, I don't feel overwhelmed. It's just like, well, just, I guess I'll just get up some reference and draw that. That seems to work pretty well for me. Like all these little psychological tricks I play on my mind to just keep myself from procrastinating and to just keep at it. That's what I have to do. So what I am doing today is I had a bit of a thought. There's this short story idea I've had. It's more of an image that's just been arrested in my mind for a story. I've had this for a while. And then the whole werewolf unicorn thing, which is of course the second anthology book by the V100s that is coming out later this year. You'll be hearing loads more about that. I've already seen my YouTube feed fill up. Lots of people doing the 100 Days of Making Comics, which is awesome because I'm trying to keep up with all of them and see what stories they come up with. However, the whole werewolf unicorn thing, talking and drawing at the same time, people. Anyway, anthology book coming up and people drawing from the mythologies and like taking literal interpretations, kind of resurrected this idea of this image of an excavation at an archaeological site and a cryptoid, like a creature from myth being found. And then I thought, like, well, if I'd write a 4-page story for the anthology, I'm not actually going to be in this book. I will be supporting it hardcore on this channel though, because I'm very excited about this book. It wouldn't be they find a werewolf or a unicorn. That's kind of the conclusion at the end. It would be a completely different creature. And so the whole, the story would kind of focus on that different creature and then what happened to these creatures, and then you find out about the werewolves and the unicorns and one discovery leads to the next. That's kind of where my initial thoughts were. And then this morning I woke up and I was still in that slumber, half asleep, and just where your imagination you can just come up with anything and you can just see it right before your eyes perfectly. And so I had written down some ideas for comic book pages yesterday. And so from the top of my head, page 1, a family is setting up the Christmas tree, putting a little angel on top of the tree. And then there's a series of panels, and the panels are nothing more but iconography of angels, like from pop culture, so like stuffed animals, so to speak, um, an inspirational meme on Facebook, that people like to share about angels. Could be, it could be anything, but like each panel is like someone talking over about like what they're doing and just kind of thinking about angels and what they mean and what they have meant and somewhat of the mythology surrounding them. So at some point they go from the imagery that we're much more familiar with in this day and age to winged human beings have been put on display around religious sites for a very long time. Like you can find them, in ancient Rome and Greece and Egypt. And so this notion, whether it's meant symbolic or they believe that these beings actually exist, has been around for a long time. The final panel on page 1 is the lady. So basically this person goes all like scientific and like thinking out loud, like what, basically what we're dealing with is like a creature with 6 limbs. The extra brain power that would require to fly. Well, what if the angels are Italian and they like to talk with their hands and they're flying? Like, takes a lot of brain power. So how would that all work? And then page 2, pinup, with a little box continuing the thought, and it says, I guess we'll never know. And then the pinup is a top-down view of an archaeological dig finding the fossilized remains in the bedrock of an angel. And I thought, like, that's a great hook in 2 pages. So then, I got on the phone with my beautiful girlfriend, Maui, and I just started talking about this idea, and then she immediately started throwing some ideas out of her own, where we got this back and forth where I felt like, in my mind, like, though not set in stone, kind of went along the lines of, like, if we actually find this, what would the consequences be in the real world of finding a creature like this? And so her point of view being much more from the religious point of view and the what we know in pop culture from TV shows and movies and thinking along those lines would be much more like, oh, but what if there's a family of angels still living? What if someone is an angel but he doesn't know it? And he's connected to that site. And so I felt this urge to like push back, and then I thought, like, no, wait, how can we incorporate everything? And I thought, like, what if we stick to the idea of this being like a short story in which the hook is, if we'd find the fossilized remains of a being like this, of course, immediately people would jump all over it. Some people might take the side of like, well, it questions their beliefs. Other people might take the side of, well, are they still alive or are they extinct? And then some people might think they're descendant from these beings, right? And all of them are interesting storylines, but you can wrap them up in one short story where the discovery forces both the reader and some of the protagonists to deal with some of these thoughts and how they clash and how you can imagine them clashing in the real world. For example, the Body Worlds exhibition that I saw in both London and in Amsterdam, which is all about this modern mummification process of bodies donated to science, and then the scientists who came up with it, and they basically look all like plastic, so they're very surreal, but they're real bodies, and they can be dismembered in parts for students of medicine to have a proper look at. So rather than looking at either a corpse or a dummy, a plastic toy, they can look at the actual body in pristine condition. And so the scientists behind it thought this would be a great way of showing off science to the greater public and turn it into an exhibition. And there was a lot of people who got very upset about the dead being put on display like this. Myself, I was amazed. I thought it was incredible to see what they put on display. But at some point, unfortunately, someone who was very much against the dead being put on display decided to take a hammer to the exhibition, and what I found a very contradictory move, took the hammer to the bodies, and then, instead of... Anyway, but you can imagine like people clashing over all these ideas that we've had about them and the beliefs people have about them. And what if there's someone who has clear magical ability? In the end, what do the bones say about any of these stories? Well, nothing. And that was the hook for myself, as the person who's going to draw this, that I found most interesting. It reminded me of like a very H.P. Lovecraft thing to do, where he builds up this whole short story in which someone is discovering a portal to another dimension and all this supernatural stuff is happening, and he explains to you like how he's opening the portal and the sacred ancient books of like forgotten religions and like all this stuff, and then in the end something happens and the person goes insane and is never seen again, and you never find out what happened. So what was it? And like that, like that effect it had on me reading those short stories, where you just like, and like your whole imagination just fills it in. And like in this short story, and the key for me is of course it being a short story so that I can draw it fast, and I have another story to work on in a different style, hopefully, is it would literally not involve me as the writers taking a point of view. It would not involve saying like, and this is what we think about angels. There's all these views that you might be familiar with around you that are in this story, and they're going to clash. And what does this finding have to do with it? I guess we'll never know, but it will elicit a response. That's the thing. That's the short story. That's the horror. How do we pin this all down? So I'm just gonna, to just kind of consolidate what I've just talked about. I was actually doing that in images, and then I thought, oh, let's make a video. So I just kind of want to have a family. So let's say a little girl. And I kind of want to consolidate these thoughts in some very clear imagery. Let's say it's the manga, and it's like all this religious iconography, and like, what's the Christmas tree? Yeah, presents. That's an image. It's an image. Like all this could just be separate panels, or they could just all be mixed in. Let's see, someone could be on a laptop here, could be Facebook. It's the wall. It could be a thing. It could be a with Angel, like some inspirational quote. It's all this pop cultural references throughout the ages. Greek vase of a battle. This could be the narrator. And the narrator could be someone who's not related to the actual excavation, so we'll never know. So this is kind of how I throw a lot of ideas out. I've noticed that in the V100s group, the internet community of people who've done who have done or are doing the 100 Days of Making Comics, and they're all hard at work at their short stories for the next anthology they're going to put out a little later this year. You'll hear more about that on this channel as well, as an avid supporter and member of the group. So some people definitely write down full scripts. Some people just made storyboards. I kind of do both, you know. When I'm at work, I just jot down words and phrases on Notepad on my iPhone, and then when I'm at home, quickly get some imagery out, and then eventually I'll just make the actual thing, you know. You'll never know. So I guess like with an excavation you have those wires. Like how far out do we want to zoom? I kind of just want to have like a human figure, like crunched over. Like a toolbox. The perspective is already gone. So we can just correct it. Somewhere rocky, mountains, pine trees. And so there will be bones, like who knows? So I don't know how I'm going to draw this. You're here on the phone. You're going like, what the hell? It's kind of my, so these are the first two pages I've already dreamt up, so now we kind of have to come up with like the harder stuff, which is like, let's say someone is driving a car, because we need to have an introduction of some other people, and if I want to play around with the ideas that people have about, say, guardian angels, and that some people are better angels or are fallen angels, and I'm talking about like human beings here, not actual angels, but who knows? We don't know. So there's a car speeding. So this could be a scene where there's basically like an accident waiting to happen, one of those moments. Life flashing before your eyes kind of thing, right? The ear This is all black. Something happens, like let's say there's an accident, and then someone is there at the, at the right time. So there's definitely a car turned over. So we have like a mysterious person who rescues someone from an accident and is like, he becomes like their guardian angel, and it's one of those miracle survivals where in the story I want it to be, so once the ambulances start showing up, ways that people survive where the people who are here can't believe that they survived, like it's a miracle. And like someone was there, does he or she have powers, yes or no? That is like, if it's up to me, that will always be open to interpretation, but something definitely happened. But it might be a human thing, it might be a magical thing. So I just added a splash of color, and lo and behold, this is intended to be 3 different pages. All the ideas very quickly, with a little ballpoint and a little ink and the odd crayon. I managed to get this going. It's pretty exciting. And I'm just having fun with like putting the imagery together, and I'm having fun like seeing how the brush works, and it of course works differently on different kinds of paper. Like when I did this thing yesterday that you may have seen, you'll probably see it like right after this clip, how I put this together and just having fun with like cutting out paper and using it to get sharp edges off the brush, and just trying to figure out how they do certain line work in comics. Well, certain artists do, because clearly some use digital and some use just the ink pens like Staedtlers or Microns, and others are going all out with brushes or a combination of everything. Found an inker the other day who did Batman like 6 years ago, and he was clearly doing a mixture of all, like pens, brushwork, and then filling in all the big pieces in black rather than just grabbing a brush and doing it. Just a lasso tool in Photoshop and just dropping the ink in super fast. Everything is permitted after all. So this is my 3 pages of another short story besides this one right here, which I'm not ready to reveal because I'm waiting on Marshall for his pages, and then that means I am now working on 3 comics at the same time. And the whole idea, as I said at the start, is to get the creative juices flowing, to try out lots of different ways of drawing, and to make pages faster and faster and faster, so that Fosphor itself, which I want like to be my best art, but so that that also gets finished as quickly as possible. And that about wraps up this week's episode. I guess it was more of a bi-weekly episode, really. So there's a little bit more art on display for you guys. I hope you dug it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below of some of the thoughts and ideas for stories. Do you have a side project that you want to share down below so I can follow the link? Yeah, just write it all down and I'll get back in touch with you. In the meantime, keep the pencil moving, keep the ink flowing, and I'll be talking to you soon.